What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. One of my favorite guests in Next Pats history coming at you today. It's Dan Koppen, old buddy Dan Koppen, formerly of NBC Sports Boston, currently of Squad Locker. He's going to tell you about his new company, but he's also going to come on and tell us about Tom Brady, about what he thought about the Tom Brady retirement announcement. Dan's still very close with Tom Brady, good friend of his. And so he gives us some really good insight in terms of how he felt about Brady's decision to retire, period, the decision to leave the Patriots out of his initial announcement, to then drop a video later in the week that really felt like an ode to the Patriots in some ways because there was so much Patriots video used. We'll get into all of that Brady stuff, but I think the portion of the conversation you might like the most will be about what's next for the Patriots offensive coordinator spot, because we're still trying to figure that out as we stand here on Thursday afternoon. Josh McDaniels out. Who comes in? I was told earlier this week, two names to keep an eye on. Number one, Bill O'Brien. Even though Nick Saban said earlier this week, he doesn't know that Bill O'Brien is trying to get out of Alabama. There's been a lot of quote unquote maybes on the internet. Just would have loved to see how Nick Saban delivered that line in person, because I can envision it in my brain, and it's always entertaining to me to hear that guy talk. But I've been told not to rule that out. And Ian Rappaport goes on WEEI this week and says there's actually interest on both sides. Bill O'Brien clearly still has many New England connections. He's from the area, vacations in the area. I think it would be the perfect marriage on both ends, but we're going to hear what Dan Koppen has to say about that potential marriage, because he was here for the entirety of Bill O'Brien's tenure here in New England. They both were here through 2011. Bill O'Brien moves on to Penn State. Dan Koppen moves on to the Denver Broncos, but he knows Bill O'Brien very well, shares some really good insight there in terms of how he thinks the fit would be with Mac Jones and how he could help Mac Jones. But Dan Koppen also knows, that's why this guy's a perfect guest this week. We couldn't have come up with a better guest. He also knows Adam Gase, and that was the other name I was told to keep in mind for the Patriots offensive coordinator spot, potentially. If it doesn't work out with Bill O'Brien, if for whatever reason they can't get that figured out, Adam Gase should be a name on our radars. And I know if you're in the car, you just threw on the brakes, maybe even pulled the emergency brake, and you're now in the breakdown lane and you're breathing heavily and your heart rate is climbing. I get it. I'll be honest. No one during his time in Miami or New York was more critical of Adam Gase than yours truly. And I think as a head coach, he was overwhelmed. As an offensive coordinator, though, would it work where he can just focus on that one job, where he can focus on calling plays, where he can focus on bringing in a system that should really resemble the Patriot system, and maybe even not do that? Maybe he would end up doing what Nick Saban has his offensive coordinators do, which is, I know you know how to do one thing, but when you come here, you learn my offense. And I could see Bill Belichick doing that because of the background that Adam Gase has, and because of the language that Dan Koppen is going to tell us about that he has experience with. He should be able to come in, learn whatever he needs to learn about the Patriots terminology, about the Patriots playbook, and be able to implement it and be able to continue with Mac Jones on this trajectory that he started with Josh McDaniels as a rookie. So those are two names there. They're two guys that Dan Koppen has experience with in the NFL. He loves both. We make him pick which one would be the best candidate towards the end of our conversation. So you're going to have to stick around for that answer. We even get some high level stuff from Dan Koppen about the run game and can you win in today's NFL as a run first team, which the Patriots really were, arguably more than any other team in football when it comes to running in neutral situations in 2021. Can they do that again and depend on having high level success that way? Great answers from Dan across the board. Let's get to our conversation with Koppen right now. Very happy now to have with us on Next Pats, Dan Koppen, longtime Patriot, former colleague, close friend, not only of ours, but of Tom Brady's as well. Great to have you on, Dan. Thanks for being with us, man.
Phil, it's always a pleasure to see you, talk to you. Excited and probably a little nervous on what you're going to get into today, but let's just go.
There's no reason to be nervous. You're the perfect guest for us to have, because anytime there is Tom Brady and Tom Brady drama related storylines in the news, the best place to go for dirt and for drama is an offensive lineman. I think everybody knows that. That's just sort of their reputation. They love to talk about that stuff. They love to get into that stuff. So we're going to talk to you about that. First, I need to ask you about the backdrop, because this is one of the best backdrops, one of the most beautiful backdrops we've ever seen, as somebody who's a big fan of jerseys. What can you tell us about where you are right now? You're working for Squad Locker. Tell us about the new gig.
Yeah, I've been with Squad Locker now probably for about 1.5 years. And, this backdrop is in the podcast room that we have here at Squad Locker. Me and my buddy, technically my boss, who's an ex-minor league baseball player for the Houston Astros. So we have a podcast called Past Our Prime that we put on every week or a week or two whenever we can come in here and really talk about stories and the locker room of when we played, and bring on guests and talk to them about, old stories, current topics, and just have a lot of fun getting to know a lot of different people. And then with Squad Locker, I mean, we're coming, man, and we're growing, and what we can do and what we offer, single unit, customized pieces, apparel, direct to the customer's home. And I think that's what it's all about. And it goes back to giving back time to those coaches, to those administrators, to those, maybe corporate people as well. It's just giving back time so they can focus on their family. They can focus on developing new mentoring techniques, new coaching skills, where they don't have to worry about the middleman in the custom apparel business. And we take care of a lot of that for them.
Love that. So those folks should make sure they're checking out Squad Locker, and we should be checking out the podcast.
Yeah.
Past Our Prime.
Yeah. We got Past Our Prime. I think it's at Past Our Prime Show on Instagram. I'm not sure what the other ones were. I'm not the most technologically advanced person.
That's what search bars are for. That's what search bars are for, my friend.
www.squadlocker.com. You can DM me on Instagram, Cope67, and we'll get you set up.
Love that. I did see you got a very prominent shout out, I believe, from @Tom Brady on Instagram.
Yeah.
For your recognition of him as he made his retirement. Very nice photo that you chose.
Yeah.
Which was you back in the day. I don't know what year that would have been.
I have no idea. I do know it was I think it was the Stetson ad.
Right.
I have no idea what magazine it was. Just the man holding a goat or a sheep. It's kind of weird. And it alludes to what you said earlier about offensive linemen. I mean, I don't care how big you get. I don't care how much money. I don't care how many Super Bowl titles you have. Us linemen, and credit to Matt Light, that was his idea, and he was involved in it. It was just a picture taken of me, but you're never out of getting messed with. I mean, that's what happens.
All right. Well, a lot of Patriots fans, Dan, you may have noticed, felt like they were getting messed with when Tom Brady made his retirement announcement and did not mention Patriots, Bill Belichick, Patriots fans, Robert Kraft family. What did you make of that? And I don't know if you saw, you're a busy man. I know you've been working today, but Tom Brady actually just dropped another social media post. This one was a video featured a lot of Patriots video, and it felt like it was almost a makeup call, if you will, to use a sports reference, and sort of coming back with that in order to make Patriots fans and maybe the Crafts and whoever else feel a little bit better. What was your take on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand from a fan's perspective, because I'm a fan now. I mean, I've been away from the game long enough where I don't consider myself, a part of the team, or I just like to watch football on Sundays, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to watch Tom Brady on Sundays anymore. So I mean, there's that piece that everybody's angry, and then I get what the fans are saying about the retirement Instagram swipe right type things, and I get it. I just I don't pretend to know what he's thinking or how he's going to operate this. Maybe that thing 2 years ago where he wrote out a nice thank you to the Patriots fan, maybe that was him. That was closing the book on the Patriots. And, this is the next phase, and he's closing the book on this and thinking, I already thanked them 2 years ago. I just, maybe there's something else coming up. I find it hard to believe that, things aren't calculated and thought about, especially, a man as smart as him.
Was it strange to you then that he did leave the Patriots out?
Yeah, there you go,
Phil.
was it strange they left the Patriots out? or left the Patriots in general?
No, left the Patriots out of the retirement announcement.
Yeah, I can see both sides. I really can. I can see how focused he is as a human and as an athlete. Where okay, I did that already. I moved on. And I can see the side from the Pats fans like, hey, you spent 20 years here. Most of your careers here. You spent a year and a half there. I can see both sides. The thing with Tom is though, I know what he means to me, and I know how much our friendship is. All that other stuff is just noise. It really doesn't get to the relationship that he has with a lot of guys. So I'm going to back him on what should have been, really a joyous day, a great day for him moving on to the next phase of his life. Probably whether it was calculated or not, probably didn't go the way he thought it was going to go.
I think that's probably safe to say, and maybe that's why we see the video today that we see. And in it, he's really featuring a lot of his teammates, right?
Yeah.
That to me felt like, I don't know if he looked at it that way. And it's interesting to hear you say that, and it's illuminating for us to hear you say, hey, as a teammate and as a friend, I didn't need that. Thank you. I didn't need that tip of the cap that some fans, I think, wish that they had heard. But I found today's video interesting because it did seem like it was focusing on teammates and the people that he did the job with. And I wondered, we focused on the fact that he didn't mention the fans or Robert Kraft, but I wonder if there were teammates out there, Dan Koppen obviously not included, but I do wonder if there were teammates he played with, a lot of different guys who sat there and said, I guess, I spent a bunch of years with him too. Yeah. I guess, I don't know, maybe it didn't mean as much to him as I thought it did.
I mean, everybody's different. Everybody thinks about things in a different way. And that's why I can appreciate and get what the Pats fans, what their frustration was. As far as other players, I'm sure there's other players out there that probably maybe, didn't need a name drop, but would appreciate, hey, my Patriots teammates back in the day, thank you as well. Or maybe he just thought about it as two retirements, one from the Pats where he did say all those things. He said, Mr. Kraft, Coach Belichick, teammates, thank you for everything. But, this part's done. I'm moving on. So to get into what people are thinking, Belichick told us a long time ago, you have no idea what they're thinking. So don't really speak for them. All I can do is back my guy and know who he is as a person and who he was on the field and how many memories that he gave me and he gave every one of those fans, whether they were in New England or Tampa. And, that's what I'm going to go off of.
And I know you're close with Tom, and I do want to ask him, I mean, were you surprised that he did retire, Dan, because he's still so good? I made the argument earlier this year that, he should have been the most valuable player in the league this year. And I guess he still has a chance at getting it. I think Rodgers is going to end up getting it, but at 44 years old, he's just coming off a Super Bowl. He's still somehow at the top of his game. Did it surprise you that he didn't continue on, get to that 45 number that we've heard before? He's still not anywhere close to that point where he said in the past, hey, I'll retire when I suck. I mean, he wouldn't sniff suck till he's 55.
He can still zing the ball. There's no doubt about that, and what he can do and how the command he has out on that football field, the knowledge of the defenses that there's nothing that he hasn't seen. So if he's able to just stand up, I think he can go out there and, shred a defense. But I kind of am surprised because of the competitor that he is, and the MVP you talk of. Let's be honest. I mean, I honestly don't think that really means a lot to him. It's about winning that final game at the end of the year. That's what matters, and that's always what mattered throughout his career. So when he didn't get to that final game, I thought he would have probably came back and ran it back and tried again. But the only thing that made me sort of teeter off of that was the reports that came out earlier. Okay, he's contemplating. We never heard that before. Right. And once those come, it's like Aaron Rodgers and Brady, like nothing that they do isn't thought of, and nothing that gets leaked probably isn't, it's leaked for a reason. So that was the part right after the game where, okay, he's going to take a few days. We never heard that before. So that's when I started thinking, it's like, oh, maybe it is time. And, he's probably right.
Yeah. I've heard the saying in the past. I've heard it from players who have been on the Patriots the last few years here. Once you start thinking about retirement, you're pretty close. or maybe you have already retired.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, 22 years. I mean, it's amazing what he's done. And you just think about the age gap of, guys he was working with at the end of his career. I mean, I played 11, my 10th year or 9th year in the Patriots. That locker room was completely different. So he's been able to blend in with those guys and develop relationships for 22 years. That's remarkable.
no doubt. And I do want to continue to ask you about this team and kind of what comes next, because the turnover continues, whether it's Tom Brady who's here or, now it's Cam Newton for a year, then it's Mac Jones. Okay. Now we're looking ahead for the offensive coordinator spot here. And there are two names that I have had brought up to me, Dan, in the last 24 hours as the most likely, quote unquote, most likely candidates. These are people around the league who aren't members of the Patriots.
You're in the know, Phil. Come on, you're in the know.
But they know things sometimes.
Yeah,
So the two names that have been brought up to me are names that you're very familiar with, guys that you've worked with, two different spots. Bill O'Brien, you were here, I believe, for the entirety of Bill O'Brien's Patriots career.
I love Billy O. Love Billy O.
And Adam Gase is the other one. So, but tell us about Bill O'Brien first. What would be the biggest reason for bringing him back? Maybe it's obvious, but you tell us.
Continuity. Nothing in that offense changed. Everything that Mac Jones learned last year will continue. And Billy O is a teacher, and he's got a great grasp on the offensive system, the offensive scheme, the offensive concept, and he knows what to expect coming into this building with Bill Belichick. And anytime you have a guy that knows what spent last year or 2 years with Saban. Was it last year? Just last year? So
just last year. Yeah.
He's a worker. He's a grinder. There's no lapse. There's nothing new to lose, to learn. And Mac can just continue to feel comfortable and progress in that offense that he learned last year. And I think that's the benefit with Gase as well. Gase is going to run the same system too.
Okay. So that leads me to my next question. So we know that there are connections there, right? Gase is a Nick Saban guy. Gase worked under Josh McDaniels. Yeah. Right. Well, in Denver, that's where you knew Adam Gase. So you think it would be essentially the same offense?
Yeah, no. So just take a look at my situation and trust me, I know I'm retired and I'm an old guy right now. So when I talk about this, I speak lightly about myself, but when I go out to Denver in week 2 of 2012, fortunately for me, by the offensive line coach out there was the same offensive line coach that I had in college. So his calls came back to me very familiar. I knew his system and what to do, but overall the general scheme was the New England system. And when we had an injury to the center in week 5, and just going out there in the middle of the game, which I hardly did. And it's a very, for all those backup guys, congratulate. It's a hard thing to do, to go into a game when everybody else is warm and you're just coming off the sideline. But I said to the guys in the huddle, I was like, hey, I may not talk, but trust me, I know where to be and I know where to go, because I'm still getting familiar with all the, the verbiage and the wording and everything. But just trust me, I know the offense, I know the calls, I will be where I need to be. And Gase has a great grasp on that offense as well. He's a smart guy. I know the crazy eyes thing went a little bit haywire down there in New York and Miami, but that happened to McDaniels too in Denver. When you are a head coach, when you're young, maybe you learn a few things of what not to do, or you don't be yourself in that situation. But I've had a great relationship with Billy O over the years. And when I played, I've had a great relationship with Adam Gase when I played with him. McDaniels got a bad rap when he went to Denver. I had nothing but good things to say about Josh McDaniels. And when he came back to the Patriots as the offensive coordinator, he was the same guy that I knew. So maybe being the head coach, the first time sort of changes things a little bit, but as an offensive coordinator, you're so involved with those guys and in the room with them all the time. The relationship piece is key. And I think in the situations that I was in with, those two guys, they'd be good fits here.
So knowing that you haven't been with Gase, right, for a while now, and maybe he's made some changes to whatever he was doing, whether it's in New York or Miami. Do you feel like, to me, and I think for fans, what they've heard is the toughest thing to pick up is probably the language, right? So if you're having to translate, and we talked a lot about this when Brady went down to Tampa Bay, because the news was once he got down there, he kind of had to learn their offense, or at least learn their verbiage.
Yep.
Not the other way around, because he was the new guy.
Yep.
Would Gase have the same language for Mac Jones? Because I think that's what people are concerned about, is that Mac Jones has this promising rookie year. Does he come back in year two with somebody who's totally different, who's throwing new words at him? And there might be this period of time early in the season where he still has to get used to things, as opposed to just continuing on the upward trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think it would be a combination of a lot of things, or not necessarily a lot of things, but it'd be a combination of maybe some of the things that he used. But overall, from what I can remember from Denver, a lot of the language is pretty similar. So I don't think there would be that steep of a learning curve or a drop off for Mac Jones. Like, oh, now I got to learn the whole that. I don't think that would happen if Adam Gase came in. I think it would be a pretty smooth transition. Maybe not as smooth as Billy O, for sure, but I think generally pretty smooth when you bring in an offensive coordinator, when you talk about that.
Personality wise,
great.
Is there one guy between those two that you'd rather have working with a young quarterback? A lot's made of Mac Jones's personality. I think we're starting to, we're still sort of getting to know it, right? Yeah. But there have been reports from even back when he was at Alabama that he could be emotional and that he could get a little too emotional at times. I thought he was pretty good in terms of bouncing back from when he might have an emotional moment, or he might have a bad moment. I thought he showed pretty consistently over the course of the year, this past year, that he was pretty good in terms of being able to rebound in those moments. But of those two guys, who would you rather have work with?
I mean, I hate to pick between two. I'd have to go Billy O, just because I spent so much time with him and know him so well as a person and as a teacher of the game and his offensive mind. I mean, he really is. He's a bright guy. He's a committed guy. He works well with the quarterback in that relationship. But, I'm not going to sit here and say Adam Gase isn't qualified or isn't just as good. It's just, who does Bill want? But I think there are two good names that popped up that I think will fit well in the scheme.
Fiery personality there too, and Bill O'Brien, which we like. And Mac Jones should be used to, right? He played for Nick Saban.
No, 100%. I think a lot of Mac and his demeanor out on the football field. And I really think he can handle coaching from a lot of different directions, whether they're calm or yelling. I think the kid's pretty even keel and just really does his homework and tries to go out there and be as prepared as he possibly can. And that speaks to Mac. It's not really about whether the coach is emotional or not. Yeah, that football's an emotional game. If you're not going to accept that from the coach, get off the field.
Last thing I want to ask you, Dan, and we've kept you longer than we anticipated. I apologize for that.
It's good to talk to you, Phil.
But I'm going to sneak as much time with you as I can. And this is sort of a big picture football topic. And when we used to have you on podcasts here with Giardi and Mayo, and you guys would have great discussions, I feel like this would be a good question to ask someone of your football intelligence quotient. Okay. So knowing that I'm talking to an offensive lineman too here.
Yeah, the smart ones.
Well, yes, the smart ones for sure.
Let's hope I haven't forgot what you're going to ask me.
But also a little bit biased in terms of, would you rather run the ball or pass the ball? At least everybody wants to run.
I want to do both.
You want to do both?
Okay. I want to do both. I really think I love a balance in an offense. And the more you can run the ball, the more it opens up the pass game, and especially the play action game, where you can get huge chunk plays off of. And I think if you get set into one of those things, then it's easier for the defense really to hone in, bring a safety down, extra safety in the box. Then you're stopping the run, not really worried about the pass game. That being said, if you're not able to run the ball, then you've got defensive linemen that are really smart, really athletic, and really fast. They're just sitting. What pass rush? What pass rush move am I going to use the next play? They got a lot of time to think about it, and not a lot of things to think about other than a pass. So, I'm a big balance guy, and I think, I mean, I forget, Scar always had our records. Like if we ran the ball 20, 25 times, our record was astronomically good. I mean, it really was. So, I mean, if you want to pass the ball, you got to be able to run the ball. And if you want to run the ball, you got to be able to pass it.
We actually had Scar on the Next Pats pod a few weeks ago, and it was right after the first Bills game. So all those runs, right, 46, 47 runs or whatever it is, I was like, we got to try to get Dante on and just see what he thought about that game.
Yeah.
He had the number 24. He said, if we ran the ball 24 times, then we had a really, really good, he didn't give us a percentage, but we had a really high percentage chance of winning. That's how he felt. I assumed you would say, I want to run the ball, because I've heard David Andrews, for instance, say, like, if we could run the ball every play, like that'd be amazing, because everybody would rather go forward than backwards. But they are, Dan, the team as it was built, at least this past year, they were a run first team, right? So, and you could look at some of the different numbers in quote unquote neutral situations. So the game is still, it's not like the game's in hand. And so you're running to salt away the clock. Those types of situations, you take 2 minutes out of it. Like they liked to run the ball more than any team in the league.
Yeah.
Do you think you can win at a high level that way in today's NFL?
Yeah, that's the thing that's kind of hard. And one of the reasons why I say that run pass balance is so important. I mean, you're going to chunk out 5-minute drives, 7-minute touchdown drives, and then when you have a team like Buffalo or Kansas City, all right, it takes them 1:30. It's harder to put those drives, those longer drives, back to back to back than 1:30 drive. So I think there's got to be a balance between that grinded out style and that explosiveness that you see from some other teams in the league.
That's why we have you on. We get the big brain on the podcast
big
to tell us about the big picture topics. That's what we love to talk about here on Next Patch, because we love talking drafts. We love talking free agency. It's like, okay, so they need to get better. Where do they get better? Where do they have to add in order to be a more explosive team, to be able to compete with some of those teams that can score? Never mind 1:30, Dan, 13 seconds the other day. Kansas City and Buffalo going down the field. They need a field goal in 13 seconds, and they can go get it whenever they want.
When you had Scar on, I saw a couple headlines. I think he said he needed a binky for Mac Jones. I would love a binky for Mac Jones. I'll echo what Scar said. Someone on the outside that's going to take a top off the defense, give a presence to get those possession receiving, just someone that he always knows he can get the ball to. And then I think we saw in the Buffalo game, they look kind of slow. I think they need to get some more speed on that defense. I love Barmore. I really like him as a defensive lineman, and I think they're going to get great return on him. I think he's a special player that can turn into something. But you take a look at that skill set that he brings. I think they need to find more of those guys on the defensive side of the ball.
No doubt. It seems like they have plenty to build on with Barmore and Mac Jones and some of these other young players that they brought in the last couple of years. It's just they got
Judon, they hit Judon, and Hunter Henry looked pretty good towards the end of the half. And then if you can get Jonnu Smith to, and I'm not going to say he's a bust or whatever, he's learning new things, but if you can get him on board, they do have pieces to build around.
I think Jonnu Smith might be forever used as an example here in New England of, might not be fair to him, but what can happen if you miss the spring?
Yeah,
we know how they value the spring here, and he didn't. A lot of guys, granted, a lot of guys in the team didn't do the optional portion of the spring workouts this year, and then he unfortunately got hurt very early in the first mini camp practice, so he really didn't have any spring practices at all. And I wonder if they will look back on that. And the flip side to that is Hunter Henry was there for everything, and I wonder if they look back at that and say, "See, here's player A." Did go to the spring stuff. Player B,
just on that, Phil. Yeah, Phil, that's a good point. But just on that too, look at what Billy O did with the two tight ends, and one of them we won't name or whatever. Look at how that offense ran with those two tight ends, and if he can bring those guys, up to speed and work it that way, that's just good stuff right there.
It'll be
as my buddy. That's just good hockey.
That's just good hockey.
That's just good hockey.
That's, I think, the first time we've ever mentioned that line here on the Next Pats podcast.
It's great. One of my buddies, he's a coach. He's actually the Nate Lehman at the PC in Texas. He's always just like, that's good hockey. So
love that. No matter what you do. So you send a good email, you have a good meeting,
good text, hockey. Whatever. That's just good hockey.
I love that. Well, we'll have to bring you back on the Next Pats podcast sometime soon, Dan.
Anytime. You got to come on ours.
More lines like that. I would be happy to come on yours, be honored to come on yours. Make sure, Next Pass listeners, that you're going to the Past Our Primes podcast, Past Our Prime podcast.
Past Our Prime, which
will get you that Next Pats bump. So there should be at least a dozen or so listeners that you picked up
and then we'll
today that you didn't have
more
yesterday.
On our dozen too. So it's perfect.
Perfect.
Right,
Dan Koppen, thanks so much for being with me here on Next Pats, my friend. This has been great.
All right. Thanks, bud.
All right. Love talking to our guy, Dan Koppen. Thanks to him for coming on. Make sure you go check out his podcast. Love that. Past Our Prime. Go search for that thing. I got to go search for that thing. Start listening to that. Throw that in the old roster of podcasts that I've got on my phone. So awesome stuff there. And really interesting to hear him talk about O'Brien and Gase. To lean O'Brien. He knows O'Brien better, I would guess, because they were together for so long here in New England. And O'Brien is a teacher. I've heard him described the same way. I know people really focus in on the fact that he's a fiery guy and maybe they consider him a motivator and a play caller, but not a teacher at his core, which is the way Bill Belichick is described. If you hear people who've played for him or coached with him over the years, his parents were teachers. He is a football teacher, maybe the greatest football teacher to ever live. Well, Bill O'Brien, though he might do it in a different way, is a teacher in his own right. And I've heard he's excellent in that regard. And so to take a young quarterback that he knows a little bit already, we've heard from Mike Rodak and others that it was Mac Jones who taught Bill O'Brien the Alabama offense when he got there initially. So there's a little bit of a relationship there. I think if you bring him in, you could really see that thing blossom. And I think Mac Jones would take to that kind of coaching from Bill O'Brien. Again, he played for a tough coach in high school. He played for a tough coach in college. He plays for a tough head coach right now. He's young. He's part of a different generation. There is no doubt about that. And at times we have seen him lose his cool. We saw it in training camp. I think we saw it at the end of the Saints game early this season. But by and large, for a player his age to be able to bounce back from some of the things that he went through as a rookie, really difficult circumstances, a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, to be praised the way he was by guys like Dante Hightower, Matthew Slater, Devin McCourty, David Andrews, guys that have seen the best of the best go about their craft. And for them to say the things that they've said over the course of the last 12 months about Mac Jones, I think that gives you pretty good indication of the fact that no matter who's coaching him, he's going to maximize that. And we'll see what happens from there. How that plays out on the field, we still have to find out. But I think Bill O'Brien would be the best fit, but dark horse coming up around the outside, potentially, if it doesn't work out with Bill O'Brien, could be Adam Gase. Hopefully everybody's caught their breath by now. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll be coming at you from LA, the Super Bowl. Planning on talking to a bunch of great guests. Hopefully we'll get as many as we can on the Next Pats podcast, but I'm sure we will be somehow doling out all of the content that we create out in LA during Super Bowl week for you. So check us out here, Next Pats podcast, Patriots Talk podcast, NBCSportsBoston.com. I'm on Twitter at Phil A. Perry. You'll be able to track everything we're doing there. We've got to do a mailbag at some point in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. Send us questions whenever you'd like, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, or if you leave a review on our Apple Podcast page, we'll get to our questions there, and we'll have some content for you that way. Thanks again, guys. Next Pats podcast. We'll talk to you very soon.